Warren County, as we continue to hold our news conferences to keep our residents informed about the ever-changing challenges of this pandemic, we wish to still send a message of hope to all the people of Warren County and surrounding areas whose lives have been turned upside down by this tiny virus, which has changed everyone's outlook on life and has become our common enemy. Recently, Governor Bill Lee called a special session of the Tennessee General Assembly to address three topics of concern: the general liability associated with the virus, expanding telemed across the state of Tennessee, and then protecting public property and monuments across the state. So today we welcome 16th District State Senator Janice to our BLTV live stream. Senator Bowling was born in Alabama, an Auburn graduate, was a teacher by profession, married Colonel Temple Bowling. They moved to Tullahoma, raised their children. She became involved in local politics, became an alderman, vice mayor for the city of Tullahoma, worked for Van Hillary, ran for state senate, was the first woman to hold that district seat, and now she has been named Deputy Speaker of the Tennessee General Assembly. So today we welcome Senator Bowling. She's been a friend for a long time. She assisted in helping me save the driver's license center, restore funding for 911, and expand reimbursements for our ambulance services over this last session. So Senator Bowling, we welcome you to BLTV today.
I thank you so much, Mayor Haley, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing this for your residents, your citizens, your constituency. A lot of people don't have the capability that you have in Warren County because of the enrollment television and telephone. So I think that this is a tremendous service, and it does keep everyone connected, and it certainly does realize that we're all still together, even though I really look forward to the day that we are looking at each other eye to eye and shaking hands and hugging necks. And until the meantime, I guess we have to do what our grandmama told us. We wash our hands and we don't hug strangers. So that's kind of where we are with this pandemic that has lasted much longer than we had anticipated. I do want to make one clarification on the bio. I did not marry Colonel Temple Bowling. I married a graduate student while he was getting his master's, who then became second Lieutenant Temple Bowling.
Okay.
And during the course of our marriage, he did become Colonel Temple Bowling. But I will jokingly just kind of make that clarification. We have been blessed. This Sunday will be our 51st wedding anniversary. We were children when we married. And looking at the pictures, I think we all look at those and think, wow, we were younger than we realized. But I do thank you, and I do want to address the three main reasons we went, and there ended up being a fourth bill that was brought before by Senator Joey Hensley. So that was Senate Bill 8001, and that bill was introduced, prohibited a governmental entity from intentionally preventing or prohibiting law enforcement or fire and rescue services from accessing a specifically bounded area within the governmental entity's jurisdiction during a public demonstration. Now, to make that clear and simple, we saw in Seattle and in Portland and in different places, local governmental entities actually would not allow law enforcement, firemen, any first responders to go inside the area that, in particular, Black Lives Matter had commandeered. And that resulted in quite a bit of damage to government buildings, to private property, and it was reprehensible that certain governments would abandon their responsibilities during such a crisis. So Senate Bill 8001, House Bill 8006 did create that law, which says that they're prohibited from blocking that service, and it declares that a governmental entity may be held liable for injury proximately caused by the government entity intentionally preventing or prohibiting law enforcement or fire and rescue services from accessing that specifically bounded area. That's common sense in Tennessee, and I thank Senator Hensley for bringing that forward. Now, the second bill was 8002, and 8002 actually was the COVID-19 Recovery Act. And the COVID-19 Recovery Act does just that. It helps the small businesses, the schools. It helps all sorts of entities, individuals and businesses, from being sued or having, well, it doesn't prevent them from being sued. Let me change that. This bill makes additions to present law concerning limiting liability on any person related to loss, damage, injury, or death from coronavirus. So under the Act, an individual or legal entity or person will not be liable for loss, damage, injury, or death, collectively referred to as an injury, that arises from COVID-19 unless the claimant proves by clear and convincing evidence that the person caused the injury by an act or omission constituting gross negligence or willful misconduct. And this act simply just says that a claimant in any action alleging injury arising from COVID-19 must file a verified complaint pleading specific facts with particularity from which a trier could reasonably conclude that the injury was caused by the defendant's gross negligence or willful misconduct. And also they would need the written expert medical opinion that the claimant's injury was caused by the alleged act or omission of the defendant. A claimant's failure to comply with the act, this pleading requirements will, upon condition, make the claim subject to dismissal with prejudice. In simple language, all the people who were doing everything they knew to help prevent the spread or protect the people in their business or in wherever they might have been, in school, in higher education, that they will be protected when they were in fact using the best practices and the recommendations that were being recommended at that time by CDC and by the state government, by the federal government. And the federal government very wisely gave authority to the states, and then the states and Tennessee, for instance, gave down to local level. Because as we all know, I served 7 rural counties. Each one had a different rate of people contracting the virus, the way the virus was spread. It appeared that initially those communities that were on the interstate had the earliest, highest incidences of COVID-19. So I think that was probably, we were getting it spread through interstate travel, people coming into Tennessee. Many into our parks were coming to escape New York, New Jersey, Ohio. We had tags in the state parks literally from all over, and it looked like, some sort of international football game or something, that there were all these people that were coming from everywhere, which really put a lot of our rural counties at risk initially as they were trying to escape where they knew it was rampant, where the virus was rampant. They were, in effect, bringing it down into Tennessee. I think that initially we were told many things from the Chinese government that were not accurate. They were not true. And, for instance, put everyone on a ventilator immediately. I think as we found our own protocols and as we began to treat the virus, many doctors found things like the hydroxychloroquine, like using warm, moist oxygen and treating it more like a altitude sickness than pneumonia, instead of using the ventilator. Ventilators are excellent in the instances when they are needed, but they require putting a person into a coma, turning them ever so often. It can create collateral damage with kidneys and with hearts, but that's what people were told to do initially. then a doctor in New York who was an expert with ventilators came down from New Hampshire and went to help there in New York City and realized that there were other better methods that could and should be used. Two doctors, one a U.S. congressman and one a doctor in Midland, Texas, are pulmonologists. They have had a 100% success rate with treating people with a steroid that is used to treat asthmatics during an attack. Nebulize it, allow the person to breathe in that steroid, and it treats pulmonary inflammation, which essentially is what COVID-19 is. So it has been a learning curve for a lot of different professions, and certainly for government, as we try to make sure we do not infringe on personal liberty. That condition would be worse than the cure, I think, if we were starting to totally impose ourselves on personal liberty and personal privilege. And I applaud Tennessee for recognizing that, particularly with regard to places of worship. Our church had live stream until about the middle of May, and then we began to meet again in services, 2 different services, and then we had a special room that if people did not feel comfortable in a larger room with more people, that they could go and be more isolated and watch it within those rooms. And a lot of churches have made similar concessions to make sure that as believers that we do come together, and I think that we appreciate the fact that God is in control, that God is creator, and that we are can rest in that peace, knowing who He is and what He means. But the third piece of legislation actually was the 8003, the telehealth medicine. And what that did, any condition that is currently covered where a person can go to a therapist of some sort and have this treatment in person, now if that treatment can be provided through telehealth, telemedicine, and again, in Warren County and in Tullahoma, where we have Light2, which is our local fiber to the premise, you all in London, which would provide this service to be able, for you to be able to utilize the telehealth in many ways. But that would require the insurance companies, if they cover it for an in-person visit, then they should also be covering it for a telehealth visit. So it's subject to all the checks and balances that any health provider is, and it would determine where the person could have the telehealth done, what the end product had to be, a hospital, a doctor's office, or whatever, where it was being provided. And that was something that we found out, just as we found out with education, Mayor Haley, that in all of rural Tennessee, students do not have access to fiber to the premise, and we've got to make that a priority. I have been working on that legislation literally for 7 years. It has been blocked by big telecoms, and I think now people are realizing rural Tennessee has to have that 21st century infrastructure if rural communities are going to be able to survive and thrive. And so for education, for jobs, for people working from home, my goodness gracious, when I talk with people in Nashville, I'll ask them, are you home or are you in an office in Nashville? I'm at home. And then I very discreetly say, what do you have on? And I can see the blushes from across the phone sometimes. I think people have been enjoying going in their pajamas or with their house shoes on or whatever as they're conducting business, but able to remain and not face the commute and the danger that they would be facing if they were going into Nashville every day. So that is something that we're talking about with the telehealth, but it's also applicable to education and working from home. We've got to make sure everyone has that infrastructure. Then 8004 was the bill that gives the appropriations authorization. So any cost incurred by any of this legislation, there was a specified amount that would cover this legislation so that it would allow Tennessee to get back to work, to be able to be properly treated medically, and to protect our monuments, our city halls, our county buildings from any government that will not protect them. This kind of forces them to protect them. And then 8005 was the Senate bill that addressed protesters. Our Second Amendment right, our First Amendment right, all of our Bill of Rights, our founding fathers recognized that these rights come from God and are supposed to be protected by the government. The First Amendment, the freedom to assemble, the freedom to redress government, the freedom of speech, of faith, all of the freedom of the press, those freedoms to be protected. And during the course of what happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota, an act that people across the world found abhorrent and wrong, and that police officer already had 18 complaints filed against him. They had been overturned and or dismissed, and so that everyone just was heartbroken to see that. However, what happened after that had no justification whatsoever for people to take to the streets and riot, burn buildings, tear down private property, pull down the statues that represent the history and heritage of our states and of our nation. It was craziness, and that's kind of the impetus that brought about 8001, our bill, Senate Bill 8001. But 8005 draws a bright line distinction between legal protesters, which is their right. If they want to redress the government, if they want to get out and complain about something, but they cannot allow that right to override basic laws of civility and private property, because your rights end where somebody else's rights begin. Personal story. The other day when we were in Nashville, I'd gotten up very early that morning to get into Nashville as quickly as I could and make sure that I was there by a 9 o'clock meeting. And when you're going to Nashville, you've got to allow about an extra 2 hours in case traffic is backed up, as it was the next day. But that day, I got in, had a meeting, we had other meetings, we had sessions, and I needed to get to my apartment and unpack. And when we got into the parking garage and started to exit, I was about the third or fourth car in the queue to leave, but the demonstrators had come over to Cordell Hull. They had blocked all the exits to the parking garage. They were screaming and yelling and waving signs, and that's not redressing government. That's assisting in a disorderly, verbally abusive, dangerous engagement. Because if there's a medical emergency, or just because other appointments, other people they had to pick up or drop off or whatever, you don't block passage from a building, and they had blocked passages from emergency services as well, and that's just wrong. But it was at that point legal. It will no longer be legal. In Tennessee, our first responders now have an additional protection that if they are being abused in any way by people who are supposedly engaged in a peaceful demonstration, there are things that they will be charged for if they actually go in and do. I'm trying to think of some clearly. Our troopers, for instance, had people in these peaceful demonstrators. They were trained. They knew not to touch the troopers or the Capitol Police, but they would get right in their face. They would scream obscenities. They would spit. They would throw bodily pathogens, body excrement. It was, and the police officers had no recourse but to stand there, because according to the law at that point, no one ever dreamed that that would be something that you would need a law against. But we in fact do have that now, and that does give our first responders a better protection, and it also helps them to know that if anyone knowingly damages or destroys property without consent, is subject to punishment in the same manner as the theft based on the value of the property. And it makes misdemeanors of assault against first responders who's discharging or attempting to discharge their duties. It makes it a felony offense if they do aggravated assault against someone who's discharging their duties. These are things that I think Tennesseans would all agree and say amen. Thank you for doing that, because many of us know these first responders, whether it's law enforcement, medical responders, or whatever, and their job is already difficult. But if people are trying to hide behind freedom of speech, they need to understand that speech and action are different, and that if your action is illegal and causes harm or damage to another person, and at this point, the law enforcement, the first responders, then there will be a price to pay. So those are the main four bills. The one that holds local governments accountable to allow first responders to get in to put out fires and help people who are in a compromised position due to protesters or rioters. But then we also have the telemedicine, we have the COVID-19 Recovery Act, and we had the law that reinforced and made stronger the law that protects first responders, whether the people are quote-unquote engaged in a peaceful protest or just a riot in general. It clearly draws those boundaries and those lines, and I'm very proud that we were able to do that. I'm not certain how much longer I can speak, but I did want to mention on Wednesday when we were up there at noon, I received a link to an initiative that was being started called well-being checks. And that had been started by a task force that the governor and Commissioner Schwinn had put together. And it was going to require that every child, birth through 18, would receive a quote-unquote well-being check every month by designated people who were under the authority. The LEAs would have to create a director of the well-being checks, and then it was a very convoluted governmental overreach for a lot of people. We were very, very concerned. There are already state agencies, if there's a suspected child abuse, there are already agencies that take care of that. There are faith-based ministries, there are families, neighbors, state agencies that help make certain people that might be hungry during this time of pandemic, that they can contact and get food and make certain that people are not going hungry. I know in Tullahoma, and I know in County, there are a lot of faith-based ministries that have food pantries, and people know who these groups are. In each community it would be different, but they know where to go and who to call. And as Tennesseans, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that no one goes without food during a crisis like this, that they really have no way to get food. So I'm just very pleased to say that we began working against that initiative. None of us knew that it was even being considered. It was just out of the blue. And evidently it had been being worked on, I don't know for how long, but it was kept pretty quiet. And then when I got the link and read the 26 pages, I sent the link to the other senators, Republican senators, and asked them if they knew anything about it, how did it originate, where did it come from. what was the intent, and but as written, it's an egregious overreach rather into privacy and family businesses, the business of the family. I don't mean a business, but just the sanctity of the family and the parents' right to take care of their children, and not to have a governmental agency create a list of checkpoints that they thought were important, and then come into your home and try to interview your child when you're not in the room if possible. It was not good. And I'm very blessed and very encouraged that thousands of parents and grandparents saw that and rose up and absolutely, in respectful manners, but with total resolve, to have that repealed. I worked to have it scrapped. They were talking about fixing it, and you can't fix something that is systemically, fundamentally broken. And so we did get them to scrap that. A letter went out about 7:27:37 on Friday evening from the Commissioner of Education, saying that that the launch of it was not correctly communicated, and that people had misunderstood. But when thousands of people read a document and they all understand the same thing and they're all in strong opposition, I think that the intent was there in the document, and if they did not know how to express their intent, then that's actually a bigger problem. But that was something that we did deal with quite heavily for 2 days, last Thursday and Friday, until it was scrapped on Friday evening. The hard thing about giving a radio interview, I am used to being able to say, are there any questions? And you can look and see if the people are interested in one area more than the other, and you can elaborate. But due to the fact that I am on the phone and can't see the people, I just want to thank you again, though, for those that call my office and email my office on that well-being check. For those of you that we've been able to help with your unemployment, my heart breaks for the people who've been weeks and weeks without paychecks. We're doing our best to get the Department of Labor and Workforce Development to correct that. Anytime I can be of any help, my office number is Jerry Cooper's phone number, 615-741-6694. And you can find me on the internet. You can call me. You can send me any information you want me to help you with. And if it's under my responsibility, I will be glad to help. Thank you again for allowing me to be on Ben Lomond's TV. And thank you for the job you're doing there in Warren County, and for the other county mayors in the regions around there. I thank you all. This has been a learning curve for all of us, and you have really stepped up and made a difference.
Thank you for your service, Senator Bowling. We appreciate your efforts in the General Assembly for all the residents of the 16th District. And so we'll wish you well and be safe. And once again, thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you, and God bless you and the folks. Everyone's in our prayers daily. Thank you.
Thank you. Today we're going to be receiving updates from Warren County Schools Director Grant Swallows, from McMinnville Vice Mayor Ryle Chastain. River Park St. Thomas CEO Del Humphrey was supposed to be with us today, but he had to call at the last minute. But he wishes to encourage everyone for compliance with the face mask so we continue to bring down our numbers, contain the spread of the virus across the community until a vaccine is possible and available, and to not put a strain on our healthcare facilities and keeping our kids safe. I will say before Mr. Swallows comes to the podium, I got a phone call yesterday from Cumberland Caverns, and they have generously agreed to donate some funding for our school system for technology, laptops, Chromebooks. So we'll be working with that to increase the virtual learning opportunities that we have across our community for our students. So with that, I welcome Mr. Swallows to the podium.
Thank you, County Executive Haley. Thank you also to Cumberland Caverns for their support. I think that's a great example of the community support that we have seen over the course of the last few weeks, last few months, and we're certainly thankful to that. I am happy to be here this morning to report and brag on our community in Warren County and the great work that has taken place over the last few weeks and the last few months. But last Wednesday, we began our school year, and more than 5,000 students came back to our school buildings to learn in the traditional environment. We had more than 1,000 that are signed up for learning remotely. And I have had so many compliments, so many comments of how positive that last week and the beginning of this week have gone. I'm so proud of the work that our teachers, our staff has done in order to serve our students in this school year. It has been a challenge. It will continue to be a challenge, but we are up for that challenge. I'm so pleased. I also want to brag on our families and our students. I was at a school building on Wednesday morning and helping students get out of cars and taking temperatures and doing all the things, and students were excited. They were fired up. They were smiling behind their masks. They were so patient, so appreciative. Parents were patient. They were appreciative. I just can't say enough about how great the start of our school year has gone up to this point. I will ask again that you continue to be patient with us as we move through these next few weeks. I will be also honest with you. We are dealing with some positive cases from students. We do have 6 positive cases that have been reported to us. Those are in all different environments and in all different areas of our county. I want you to know, and I want the public to know, that our system is working. The system with the hybrid schedule, where it gives us an opportunity to social distance our students more appropriately and more effectively, has allowed those positive cases and close contacts to not be as prevalent. We also have been saying to you over the course of the last few weeks that students that are tested positive, they do go into isolation. They will continue learning as appropriate on our homebound or our home school curriculum, but that isolation occurs for 10 days. Any close contact that occurs, that student will be quarantined for 14 days. So again, the importance of distancing and masks are so important for our schools and our teachers and our students. So we knew this was going to happen. We knew there were going to be some positive cases. We're experiencing that in the community, but I want everyone to understand 6 positive cases among almost 6,500 people that came back to school last week. That is a good approach. We are having success where we are. We also understand that we are opening schools because of the things that it gives to all of our students, the services that we're able to offer, the education that we're able to provide is so important, and we're going to continue that. We have a board meeting this Thursday night at 5:30. That board meeting, following the governor's executive order, will be closed to the public, but it will be streamed on Warren County Schools YouTube. I've also encouraged anyone that would like to have a question answered or to make a comment, they can email that question or comment to questions@warrenschools.com, and we will do our best to have the board or myself answer that question or make a comment related to anything that needs to happen. I also know that we will be discussing where we're going to go from here with our hybrid approach, or whether to continue with our plan for students to come back in the traditional way on August the 31st. There will be lots of conversation based around that. With that being said, we also want to encourage you to those students that are learning in the remote environment or the VIP at home program to continue to reach out if you've got questions. we are working through, we've spent time this week making sure that we got the contracts out to those students so that they know the expectations for them at VIP at home, and also trying to get some orientation for those students as they learn how to log on, how to submit assignments, how to learn in the environment that they're going to learn in this year. So that information should have gone out last week. We've gotten lots of calls basically trying to confirm that everyone got that information. If you still have not been contacted, please reach out to us at the Warren County Board of Education or at the VIP at Home program, and we will get that information back to you. Understand that that application process is closed a few weeks ago. We had to make some staffing decisions for that program, and so we had to close the application process for that program because of those decisions that had to be made. And so if you have applied prior to the deadline and not received contact, please contact me and we will try to get that taken care of. Just my encouragement to you, our students have done fantastic with wearing masks. They have really responded. We are implementing mask breaks throughout the day, especially in situations where students can be 6 feet apart from each other. We are trying to situate our classrooms, our cafeterias, our common spaces to where students can do that, and then in turn we can give them a break per se, but we are also asking students to keep their masks close. I just can't brag on our students and our teachers enough for being responsible with that policy and doing what they've been asked to do. We can learn from our kids many times more than they can learn from us. And if you watch how our kids have come back to school and how responsible they've been, you would be as encouraged as I am that we can get through this together, and can stop talking about these things. We can go back to doing the normal things that we're all used to. But I have great hope that our children are leading us in this way, and I hope that you will follow suit with them. So that's all the updates that I have from the school system. Please continue to work with us. Please continue to stay positive. Our kids are so excited, and we want to build on that excitement. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Vice Mayor, Ryle Chastain, for his updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Swallows. At the City of McMinnville, we continue to heed advice from local, state, and federal health officials. As the Vice Mayor of the city, I ask everyone to continue practicing commonsensical approaches to social distancing. City facilities remain open, but with limited access to the public, and face masks are required for entry. I would like to remind the public that bills can be paid and permits can be issued online and via phone for your convenience. Inquiries of the city can be addressed by calling the main office at 473-1200. Work continues on various projects around the city, including the Civic Center, which is nearing completion. We are very excited about showcasing this renovation, which will be a centerpiece for our community. As a community, we are all strong individually, but much stronger together, and I wish everyone well during these trying and uncertain times. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Swallows and Vice Mayor Chastain. I want to begin with a little follow-up and with some good face mask etiquette. Proper masks are important. With my wardrobe malfunction last week, I can be the first one to realize that face coverings can be an issue and a challenge, especially when delivering a speech, even if it's a mask that the governor's office sends you with Tennessee Strong on it. Some of you took great pleasure in poking fun at me, and it's okay to laugh with me, but we do not need to be laughing at this virus. It is still a very, very serious matter. As a teacher, I can use it as a learning tool that a good mask, like the one I'm wearing here, not so good mask that sometimes is ill-fitting and does not properly contain what it's meant to contain, even if it does come from the governor's office. At Thursday's special broadcast, I issued a mask mandate for the county. To say the least, it met with some controversy. I expected no different. That was the whole intent of that executive order. previous pleas on this stage to help contain this virus and ask people to wear a mask and do the right thing went unheeded. Over the past few months, our community has worked tirelessly to promote the safety and security of all of our residents. As a county executive, I encourage each one of you to do your part to battle this virus. Some accepted the challenge and did the right thing. Others ignored the warnings and went on with business as usual. In the meantime, our numbers grew and the number of deaths grew as well. Each week, our team has asked you to be responsible in your actions. Wear masks, use good personal hygiene, social distance, avoid large public gatherings, home shelter is necessary. Most of you modeled exceptionally good behavior. Governor Lee issued his executive order empowering local mayors and school systems with the authority to implement face mask coverings as required. I issued my Executive Order 1, which only recommended the wearing of masks, with the caution that if numbers increased, the number of deaths increased, and people ignored those measures, that a mandate would be necessary. Hence, Executive Order 2, something that I had hoped to avoid, but it became necessary. As you know, this mandate was not mine alone. Our command team met on that Wednesday and unanimously voted to take this action. That was the sheriff, that was the mayor, city administrator, chief of police, EMS, hospital director, Andrea Fox at the public health department. With our numbers rising and the White House now identifying Warren County as a red zone, and upon the request from both Governor Lee and Commissioner Piercy, we did this to protect our residents, to keep our businesses open, and to keep our kids in school. Wearing a mask is really a simple request, not any different from the first executive order I did. Changed a few simple words. There's still no citations, no arrest, no strong arm of the law. That was never the intent. No one is taking away your personal rights and freedoms. This mask requirement has had the exact results that I anticipated. It made headlines. It's blown up on social media. It's brought attention to the fact that we all must play our part if we wish to return to any kind of normalcy in our lives. Will everyone comply? Probably not. Has it made everyone happy? Certainly not, not even me. But it was a necessary step that collectively that we made in order to protect our community and protect our children. If it saves one life, it is worth it. Have I taken the heat? Of course, it's my job. The buck stops here. You elected me to have this job as a leader, not a follower, to take action, not inaction. You trusted me to bring about the change that our community needed. I've done all of that. So thank you for your support in our efforts to make it safe for our children and for our teachers to be able to return to school. Thank you for protecting our healthcare workers, our first responders, 911 and EMS employees, our frontline of defense personnel, including our firemen, law enforcement, and our government employees. Thank you for supporting our essential workers' safety and well-being, keeping our food chain intact, our delivery systems flowing, and our postal employees secure is important to our local economy. Thank you for all the businesses for doing the right thing. Protecting local business and their employees is crucial. It's the backbone of our local economy. It preserves jobs. It brings stability. Another shutdown would be devastating to all of us, and no one wants this to happen. This backlash has kind of been interesting. You see who loves this community and who are team players. It also shows who's willing to do their part to restore some kind of normalcy to our lives. I'm an optimist. I see this challenge as an opportunity to grow stronger and healthier as a community so we can provide jobs and quality of life for the next generation of students. It is, in economics, as I've always taught, all about those choices. We almost all must remember the hard choices are not always the simple choices, and they're certainly not the popular choices. Our president has been criticized for doing too little. Our governor has been criticized for doing too much. That same group of people do the same to me, whatever direction that I take. It's the nature of politics, and right now I'm not worried about votes. I'm worried about saving lives, protecting our children, and the security, safety, and well-being of 45,000 residents who call Warren County home. Saving lives comes first. The politics can come later. Just to clarify something that was in my executive order, and to clarify some verbiage that was in Governor Lee's executive order 54 and 55. Two different age groups were mentioned in the language of those orders. When I issued Warren County Executive Order 1 and 2, I kept the 2 and 2-year-old and under age limit on not being required to wear masks. I did not want to confuse parents by adding the additional verbiage of 12 and under as we started back to school. When we look at my executive order, I got some legal clarification for both the governor's office and my county council as well. I now make the following amendment to my executive order 2. Face coverings are not required for children under the age of 12, except in school settings where they have been mandated by a separate authority under Governor Lee's executive order 55. So yes, parents. Yes, Warren County. That means every child, every teacher is still under the mandate for the school system. Perhaps this will end some confusion. Perhaps it won't. But it's just a reminder that this mandate expires on August 29th to coincide with Governor Lee's Executive Order 54. It will be extended as necessary, but we won't have to do that. Until then, we will continue to keep essential government services available, our children safe in school, and our economy open. Yes, Warren County, you are an amazing county. Your commitment to do the right thing will lift us up, and all of us wish to not take us down. I'm going to leave you with a verse from Ephesians. I pray the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you. Take care and be safe, Warren County. We are Warren County Pioneer Strong. Thank you.